The stars look different tonight, John Miller thought as he stared at his computer screen. After 15 years working as an analyst at the Global Space Defense Initiative, he had memorized the patterns of signals that came from their deep space monitoring stations. Tonight something was off. John rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of cold coffee. The anomaly appeared again, a slight flutter in the data stream from Station Epsilon near Neptune's orbit. It lasted only seconds before disappearing. Most people would miss it. John wasn't most people. "You're still here?" Linda Taylor asked, leaning against his office doorway. As his supervisor, she always checked the floor before heading home. "It's almost midnight." "Look at this," John said, pointing to his screen. "This pattern keeps showing up. Something's out there." Linda sighed. "The equipment on Epsilon is 6 years old. We're scheduled for an upgrade next quarter. It's probably just a glitch. I've seen equipment glitches before. This is different." John pulled up a chart showing the anomaly's occurrences over the past week. "It's happening more frequently." "File a maintenance request and go home, Miller. Your wife must be wondering where you are." John nodded, but he knew he wouldn't leave. Not yet. After Linda walked away, he sent a message to the one person who might believe him. Lisa Morales arrived 20 minutes later, her curly hair wild, as always. The astrophysicist had a reputation for brilliant insights and even more brilliant eccentricity. She carried a tablet and a half-eaten sandwich. "Show me," she said without greeting. John displayed the anomalies. Lisa's eyes narrowed as she studied the screen. She put down her sandwich and pulled up a chair. "That's not a malfunction," she whispered. "That's a signal masking pattern. Someone's trying to hide their presence." "Hiding from who? Us?" John asked. "Maybe they don't know we can detect them." Lisa's fingers flew across the keyboard, adjusting the filters. "There, look at that." The screen now showed clear evidence of movement. Large objects, decelerating as they approached the outer solar system. "We need to alert command," John said. Lisa grabbed his arm. "Not yet. First, we need to understand what we're dealing with." For the next 3 weeks, John and Lisa worked in secret, gathering data, building models. The objects, ships they now knew, had taken position in the Kuiper Belt. They remained quiet, observing, waiting. "They're studying us," Lisa concluded, one night. Like scientists watching animals in the wild. John felt a chill run down his spine. If they're so advanced, why haven't they made contact? "Would you immediately introduce yourself to a colony of ants?" Lisa asked. "Or would you watch first to see if they're dangerous?" John didn't like being compared to an ant. Then, on a Tuesday morning in May 2047, everything changed. The aliens, the Xantari Collective they called themselves, broadcast a message to every communication device on Earth. They came in peace, they said. They wished to exchange knowledge and culture with humanity. The world reacted with a mixture of fear, excitement, and suspicion. Global leaders convened emergency meetings. Religious groups proclaimed either salvation or doomsday. Stock markets crashed, then soared as companies raced to position themselves for alien technology transfers. At the GSDI headquarters, John watched the chaos with growing unease. They were watching us for months. Why come forward now? Maybe they've learned enough, Lisa suggested. Or maybe they found what they were looking for. The United Nations hastily assembled a first contact team. Ambassador Catherine Bell, a respected diplomat with 30 years of experience, would lead the delegation. 5 others would accompany her: a linguist, a physicist, an anthropologist, a military representative, and a medical doctor. John and Lisa weren't invited, despite their discovery of the aliens' presence. They watched from a monitor room as the delegation boarded a shuttle to meet the Xantari mothership in Earth orbit. The Xantari looked almost human-like, but with gray-blue skin and eyes that seemed too large for their slender faces. They spoke perfect English, having learned it from our broadcasts. They showed the delegates their ship, a marvel of technology that made Earth's most advanced spacecraft look like stone tools. "They're being too nice," John said as he watched the feed. "Something feels wrong." The anthropologist seems to agree with you, Lisa pointed out. Dr. Alan West kept maintaining a careful distance from their hosts, his body language revealing distrust. The diplomatic meetings continued for 3 days. The Zantari spoke of cultural exchange, of shared knowledge, of a galaxy filled with wonders. They invited Earth to join the collective, a union of 17 intelligent species. On the 3rd day, during a formal dinner, Ambassador Bell made a fatal mistake. The Zantari asked about human history, and Bell spoke honestly about our past conflicts, our world wars, our rapid technological advancement. She meant to show how humanity had grown, how we had learned from our mistakes. The camera caught the slight stiffening of the Zantari leader's posture. His large eyes narrowed just briefly before he smiled and continued the conversation. Later that night, as the human delegation prepared to return to their quarters, Bell realized she had forgotten her tablet in the conference room. As she returned to retrieve it, she heard voices. The door had not fully closed. "These humans are far more aggressive than our initial reports indicated," a Zantari voice said. "Their technological development rate is concerning. They advance from primitive flight to rudimentary space travel in less than 1 century," another voice agreed. "The probability models are clear. If they reach interstellar capability, the High Council must be informed immediately," the first voice said. "I recommend cleansing protocol." "Approved. Begin preparations. These humans are too unpredictable. Initiate cleansing protocol immediately." Ambassador Bell froze, her hand covering her mouth to prevent any sound. She backed away slowly, then rushed to the human quarters. "We need to return to Earth now," she told her team, her voice shaking. "They're planning something they call a cleansing protocol." The team gathered their essential items quickly. Dr. West activated an emergency beacon, sending a coded message to Earth. They hoped it would reach home before the Zantari realized what they knew. As their shuttle detached from the mothership, John and Lisa watched from Earth. Their monitoring equipment picked up increased activity around the alien vessels. "They're moving," John said, his voice hollow. "All of them. They're taking up positions around Earth." Lisa grabbed the secure phone to call their superiors. "We need to prepare," she said urgently. "Whatever they're planning, it's happening now." In the sky above, invisible to the naked eye but clear on their monitors, the Zantari fleet deployed. Humanity had 48 hours before the first attack would begin. No one on Earth understood yet what those vessels represented. No one except John and Lisa, who watched in horror as the greatest threat humanity had ever faced prepared to strike. The first attack would come without warning, and the world would never be the same again. The first attack came at dawn. Jack Wilson was tracking a deer through the Montana woods when the sky lit up brighter than day. He looked up just in time to see fiery streaks cutting across the blue morning sky. They weren't meteors. They moved, with purpose, adjusting their paths slightly as they fell. Jack dropped to the ground when the first impact hit. Even 200 miles away, he felt the earth shake. A sound like thunder rolled across the land. Then another, and another. He ran back to his truck, fumbling with the radio dial. Every station broadcast the same message. "This is not a drill. Seek shelter immediately. Unknown objects are striking major cities worldwide." By the time Jack reached his small town of Pine Creek, people were already gathering in the center square. Some were crying. Others stood in shocked silence. A few were loading supplies into vehicles. Mary Thompson, Jack's neighbor and a retired Army communications specialist, had set up an old military radio on the tailgate of her pickup truck. Her gray hair was tied back in a tight bun, her face grim as she adjusted the dials. "Denver is gone," she announced to the crowd. "Direct hit, Chicago too. They're saying New York, Beijing, Moscow, London. All hit within minutes of each other." "Who's doing this?" someone shouted. "The aliens," Jack said. "It has to be." Just 3 days earlier, Ambassador Bell's delegation had returned with warnings about the Zantari's true intentions. Many people hadn't believed them. Now no one could deny it. "We need to organize," Mary said, standing up on the tailgate. "This town sits in a valley with only 2 roads in. We can defend it. We have enough hunters and veterans to form a militia. We have a water supply from the mountain springs. Most of you have gardens and livestock. Jack watched as the former communications officer transformed a crowd of scared people into a community with purpose. By nightfall, Pine Creek had guard posts, medical stations, and a food inventory. Similar scenes played out in thousands of small towns across America and around the world. What the Xantari didn't understand about humans was just beginning to reveal itself. In a hardened underground research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Sam Hudson watched the data stream in with increasing amazement. The aliens had followed their kinetic strikes with biological weapons, tailored viruses released into major population centers. But the results weren't what the Xantari expected. "This is fascinating," Sam told his colleague, Dr. Patty Lewis. "Look at the infection patterns." On the screen, colored maps showed the spread of 5 different Xantari bioweapons. None had achieved more than 30% effectiveness in any region. They designed these pathogens to target specific genetic markers, Sam explained, pushing his glasses up his nose. "But human genetic diversity is throwing their weapons off target." "You mean some people are naturally immune?" Patty asked. "More than that, human populations have such high genetic variation that no single bioweapon could ever affect us all. What kills someone in Kenya might not affect someone in Korea at all." Sam typed rapidly, pulling up more data. "And look at this. Where the weapons are working, we're already seeing immune responses. Our bodies are fighting back faster than they predicted." Above their hidden facility, the world burned, but humanity was proving harder to kill than the Xantari had calculated. In orbit, around Earth, Commander Vorex of the Xantari Extinction Fleet reviewed the latest reports with growing frustration. He paced the gleaming command deck of his ship, his long fingers tapping against his leg. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We've destroyed their major cities. Their governments are in chaos. Their military bases are rubble. Yet they continue to resist." His science officer, a slender female named Zexel, studied her screens with concern. "There's something unusual about their response patterns, Commander. They aren't behaving according to any models in our database." "Explain." "Most species, when faced with overwhelming force, either surrender or attempt to flee. These humans are doing neither. They're adapting. Look at these readings from rural areas." The screen showed heat signatures and movement patterns across North America, Europe, and Asia. Small communities were forming defensive perimeters. Humans were gathering resources, establishing communications, organizing. "They've survived extinction-level events before," Zexel said. "Not from external attacks, but from natural disasters. It's embedded in their collective memory. The knowledge that they can rebuild from almost nothing." Vorex slammed his fist against a console. "Send in the ground forces, find their resistance leaders, and eliminate them. Without leadership, they will crumble." Zexel wasn't so sure, but she sent the orders anyway. 3 months after the first attacks, humanity had settled into a new normal. The initial death toll was estimated at 3 billion. Major cities were uninhabitable craters. Governments operated from bunkers or had collapsed entirely. Yet people adapted. Underground networks formed. Survivors repurposed alien technology from crashed ships and downed drones. Children learned to spot the signs of approaching Xantari patrols. In what was once suburban Ohio, Karen Mitchell taught a group of children and adults in a basement classroom. Before the attack, she had been a middle school science teacher. Now she was teaching people how to sabotage alien technology. "The Xantari sensors operate on a frequency range that's disrupted by certain minerals," she explained, holding up a rock. "Ordinary granite, crushed fine and mixed with water, can blind their scanners temporarily." Greg Peters, a former auto mechanic, raised his hand. "I think I figured out how their smaller ships work. Their propulsion system is similar to an electrical current. If we could create a strong enough electromagnetic pulse, we could bring them down." Karen finished, nodding excitedly. "Let's work on that after class." This scene repeated worldwide, humans pooling knowledge, teaching each other, finding weaknesses in alien technology. Meanwhile, in a Xantari research vessel, Dr. Ellen Wright struggled against her restraints. The neurologist had been captured during a raid on a resistance outpost. For days, the aliens had subjected her to mental probing, scanning her brain as they showed her images of destruction, of suffering. The chief Xantari scientist watched her readings with astonishment. "These emotional responses are off our charts," he told his assistants. "The neural activity when exposed to images of her young is particularly intense." "Is that significant?" asked a junior researcher. "It explains much about their resistance," the chief scientist said. "Their attachment to their offspring drives them to fight beyond all rational limits. And look here, their neural pathways reorganize in real time. They learn from every defeat." What the Xantari were slowly realizing was a fundamental truth about humans. Our greatest strength wasn't our technology or our physical attributes. It was our adaptability, our emotional drive, and our refusal to accept defeat. As the invasion entered its 6th month, the aliens found themselves in an unexpected situation. Despite their overwhelming technological advantage, they were facing a species that simply refused to be eliminated, and humanity was just beginning to fight back. 6 months into the war, Earth was unrecognizable. The gleaming cities that once defined human civilization were gone. In their place, a new kind of society emerged, one that lived in shadows, underground, and in the forgotten spaces between ruins. Karen Mitchell wiped sweat from her forehead as she carefully connected wires in a device cobbled together from alien parts and human electronics. Her lab, once a high school chemistry classroom, now sat 50 feet beneath the surface in an abandoned mine shaft. 24 people worked alongside her, each focused on different projects. "Pass me that capacitor," she said to Greg Peters. The former mechanic handed her the small component. His hands, once clean and well manicured for working on luxury cars, were now calloused and permanently stained with grease and dirt. "Will it work?" he asked. "Theory says it should," Karen replied. "Their shield technology operates on principles similar to our electromagnetics, just far more advanced. This device should create a disruption field that will give us about 30 seconds of vulnerability." 30 seconds isn't much time, Greg noted. "It's enough to get a shot through their defenses, that's all we need." Outside their underground lab, hundreds of survivors had built a hidden community. Children played in artificial lighting designed to mimic the sun. Hydroponics gardens provided fresh vegetables. Engineers had rigged generators powered by underground streams. Humans were adapting, not just surviving, but rebuilding. In a Xantari research vessel above what was once Seattle, Dr. Ellen Wright had stopped fighting her restraints. After weeks of mental probing, she had learned that resistance only led to more invasive procedures. Instead, she watched her captors, learning their routines, their technology, their weaknesses. The chief Xantari scientist, whom Ellen had mentally named Skinny for his particularly slender build, seemed especially fascinated by human brain activity. "Your kind experiences emotions at intensities we considered theoretically impossible," Skinny told her one day, while adjusting a scanner above her head. "When we show you images of human children in danger, your brain activity exceeds our measurement capabilities." Ellen remained silent, but she was storing every piece of information. "It explains much about your species' reaction to our cleansing protocol," the scientist continued. "Most civilizations we've eliminated accepted extinction once the mathematical certainty of defeat was demonstrated. Yours fights harder with each loss." This was the first confirmation Ellen had heard that the Xantari had done this before. They weren't just invaders, they were exterminators who had wiped out other civilizations. In that moment, something changed in Ellen's mind. What had been a personal fight for survival expanded into something larger. She needed to escape. She needed to bring this information back to the remaining human forces. Light years away, in the Xantari home system, the High Council convened an emergency session. The 7 elder members, representatives of the original founding species of the collective, gathered in a chamber of floating platforms. "The human situation has become concerning," said the first speaker, his elongated head bowing slightly as he addressed his peers. "The extinction operation is now 6 standard periods behind schedule." "Unprecedented," agreed the second speaker. Commander Vorex reports that despite destruction of 86% of their infrastructure and elimination of approximately 40% of their population, organized resistance continues to grow. How is this possible? Asked the third speaker. Their technology is primitive. Their weapons ineffective against our defenses. The seventh speaker, youngest of the council, leaned forward. Perhaps we have encountered something new, a species that does not follow the standard civilization patterns. The suggestion created an uncomfortable silence. The Xantari Collective had expanded across 3 galaxies over 50,000 years, cataloging and studying thousands of sentient species. Their models for predicting species behavior were considered flawless. We should consider increasing the resources allocated to the Earth cleansing, the first speaker finally said. Double the fleet size. Authorize the use of atmospheric converters. Approved, the other council members said in unison. What they couldn't know was that while they debated, humans were learning more about them than any species had before. Paul Garcia had been a software developer before the invasion. Now he hunched over a makeshift computer system in the basement of an abandoned office building in Austin, Texas. For weeks he had been studying captured pieces of Xantari communication equipment. The aliens used a form of quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across vast distances, something humans had theorized but never achieved. Paul had managed to tap into their network by exploiting a flaw in their encryption. His eyes widened as he began translating the data stream. Holy shit, he whispered. The files contained records of previous cleansing operations conducted by the Xantari. 17 other civilizations across the galaxy had been systematically wiped out. Some were more advanced than humans, others less so, but all had been deemed destabilizing influences on the galactic order. Paul downloaded everything he could. This information needed to reach what remained of human leadership. In the Rocky Mountains inside the underground research facility where Dr. Sam Hudson continued his work, a meeting of the North American Resistance Council was underway. Military leaders from former American and Canadian forces sat alongside civilian experts. Their mood was grim as they reviewed the latest casualty reports. We've lost contact with the Northeast Corridor completely, General Deborah White said, pointing to a map. The aliens have stepped up their ground operations. Our forces there were overrun 3 days ago. Same situation in the European theater, added Colonel Frank Edwards. Our last transmission from the Alps group indicated they were surrounded. Sam Hudson cleared his throat. It's not all bad news. Our understanding of their technology improves daily. The weapons being developed by Karen Mitchell's group have proven effective on a small scale. Small scale won't win this war, General White countered. No, but it proves they're not invincible, Sam insisted. And I have something else to report. The captured Xantari bioweapons we've been studying, they're not adapting to our genetic diversity. It's as if they've never encountered a species with our level of variation before. The meeting was interrupted by a communications officer rushing in. We've received an encrypted transmission from Texas, she announced. Priority Alpha. It's from Paul Garcia. The information Paul had discovered changed everything. The council members listened in stunned silence as they learned the true nature of the Xantari. Not explorers or conquerors, but exterminators who had done this many times before. So we're not the first, General White said softly. No, Sami replied, but we might be the first to fight back effectively. As the meeting continued deep into the night, plans were made, resources allocated, strategies developed. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a spark of something new in the room. Not just determination to survive, not just resistance hope. In his orbiting command ship, Commander Vorex felt something he had never experienced in centuries of service to the collective. Doubt. The humans have destroyed another supply convoy, his operations officer reported. They're using our own technology against us now. Impossible, Vorex snapped. How could they understand our system so quickly? We don't know, Commander. But they're learning faster than any species we've encountered. Vorex stared at the view screen showing the scarred face of Earth. The Xantari had destroyed much of human civilization. But somehow humanity was far from eliminated. 2 years into the war, Earth was no longer just fighting for survival. Humanity had moved to active resistance. The scattered military units that had survived the initial attacks now coordinated with civilian militias across continents. Former enemies worked together against the greater threat that loomed above them all. Colonel Frank Edwards adjusted his worn cap as he studied the tactical display in his mobile command center. Once a luxury RV, the vehicle now served as the nerve center for operations across the eastern half of North America. His second-in-command, Major Diane Cooper, pointed to red dots moving across the screen. "Alien patrol heading south along the old highway," she said. "They do this route every 3 days like clockwork." Frank nodded. "That's their weakness, they're too predictable. Set up the ambush here." He pointed to a narrow pass between 2 hills. "Use Mitchell's new shield disruptors. I want to test them on a larger target this time." "Yes, sir," Diane replied. She paused before leaving. The new report from California came in. They took down a small Xantari ship last week, nearly intact. Frank's eyes widened. Did they recover anything useful? Better. They captured 2 aliens alive. For the first time in months, Frank smiled. "Things are changing, Major. We're not just running anymore." The Xantari had never expected this level of resistance. Their species had evolved through logical, methodical problem-solving. Every obstacle had a solution that could be calculated and implemented. But humans didn't follow logical patterns when threatened. They became more unpredictable, more creative, more willing to take risks that defied reasonable calculation. Commander Vorex faced the holographic projection of the High Council with growing discomfort. His mission, once considered routine, had become the greatest failure in the collective's history of cleansing operations. "Explain yourself, Commander," the first speaker demanded. 2 planetary cycles have passed. Earth should have been cleansed 18 months ago. Vorex struggled to find words that wouldn't sound like excuses. "The humans are different. When we destroy their cities, they build hidden ones. When we target their leaders, new ones emerge. When we poison their food supply, they find new sources or even adapt to eat our rations. They're not logical," he continued, frustration evident in his voice. "We predicted they would break after losing 40% of their population. Instead, they fight harder." The 7th speaker leaned forward. "Is it possible our fundamental understanding of this species is flawed?" The question hung in the chamber like a physical presence. To admit such a thing would challenge the entire foundation of Xantari expansion. "We cannot allow one primitive species to resist the collective," the first speaker finally declared. "You will receive reinforcements, Commander. The second extinction fleet has already been dispatched." As Vorex's hologram faded, the council members exchanged troubled glances. Never before had they needed to send a second fleet. Dr. Ellen Wright had been watching for the right moment for weeks. Today, as the ship's systems briefly powered down for maintenance, she saw her chance. The restraints on her examination table loosened just enough for her thin wrists to slip through. Moving silently, Ellen made her way through the corridors of the research vessel. Her time as a captive had taught her the ship's layout. She knew which areas were less monitored. She found a small transport pod used for moving between ships and escaped just as alarms began to sound. Her stolen pod crashed in the Rocky Mountains, where a human patrol found her half-frozen but alive. Within days, she was brought to the underground research facility where Dr. Sam Hudson worked. "They've studied 17 other species before us," Ellen explained to the gathered leaders. "But none of those species fought back like we have." "What makes us different?" General White asked. "Our brains," Ellen said simply. "The way we process emotion, particularly fear and love. Most species respond to overwhelming force by shutting down. We respond by fighting harder, especially when protecting our young." Sam nodded in agreement. "That matches what we've seen with their bioweapons. They're designed for species with limited genetic diversity and predictable responses. We're neither of those things." In orbit around Earth, a daring mission was underway. Commander Susan Wright led a team of 20 volunteers toward a Xantari supply ship. Their vessel, cobbled together from salvaged alien parts and human technology, approached under the cover of a new cloaking system developed by Karen Mitchell's team. "Steady," Susan whispered as they matched velocity with the larger ship. "Remember the plan. We have one shot at this." Beside her, Alan Peterson checked his equipment one last time. Before the war, he had designed roller coasters, using his engineering skills to create thrills rather than weapons. Now his understanding of structural stress would help them breach the alien vessel. "Their hull material weakens when exposed to rapid temperature changes," he reminded the team. "We'll plant the thermal devices here and here." He pointed to a diagram. "When they activate, we'll have about 40 seconds to cut through." The team moved with practiced precision. Years of fighting the Zantari had made them efficient and deadly. They planted the devices, waited for the material to weaken, and cut their way into the enemy ship. The aliens inside were unprepared for boarding. Their security systems were designed to repel external attacks, not intruders already inside. Within 20 minutes, the human team had secured the bridge. "Begin download," Susan ordered as Alan connected devices to the ship's computers. "Take everything: navigation data, fleet positions, communication codes." What they found exceeded their wildest hopes: the location of the Zantari fleet's main refueling station. As news of the captured ship spread through human resistance networks, a new sense of purpose emerged. For the first time, humanity had a clear target, something that could actually hurt the enemy. Paul Garcia had continued his work decoding Zantari communications. From his new base in the mountains of Colorado, he intercepted a message that confirmed what many had hoped: the aliens were concerned. "They're calling for reinforcements," Paul told the North American Council. "A second fleet is coming. They admit they've never failed to exterminate a species before. We're the first to truly fight back." General White's weathered face showed no emotion as she processed this information. "How long until this second fleet arrives?" 6 months, maybe 7, Paul answered. "Then we have 6 months to prepare a welcome party," she said firmly. Across what remained of Earth, the resistance prepared for a coordinated assault. Karen Mitchell's labs produced thousands of shield disruptors. Captured Zantari weapons were reverse engineered. Pilots trained to fly the handful of alien craft humans had managed to steal. In his command ship, Vorex received increasingly troubling reports. Human attacks were becoming more coordinated, more effective. They had somehow obtained Zantari technology and were adapting it with alarming speed. "How are they learning so quickly?" he demanded of his science officer. "We don't know, Commander, but they share information in ways we've never seen before. When one group discovers a weakness in our systems, all human cells seem to learn it within days." Vorex stared at the planet on his view screen. What had begun as a routine cleansing operation had become the greatest challenge the collective had faced in 50,000 years of expansion. For the first time, a species fought back, not just to survive but to win. And somewhere deep in his consciousness, Vorex began to wonder if they could. 4 years after the first attack, humanity was no longer just fighting back. They were winning. Small victories had grown into major operations. Knowledge gathered from captured ships and rescued prisoners had given Earth's forces a deep understanding of their enemy. General Richard Hayes stood before the gathered leaders of the global resistance in what had once been a nuclear bunker beneath the plains of Kansas. His uniform, patched many times, hung loosely on his frame. Like most survivors, he carried less weight than before the war. "Operation Prometheus begins tomorrow," he announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. "This will be the largest coordinated assault humans have ever attempted against the Zantari." The room was silent. Everyone understood what was at stake. After years of fighting, the resistance had identified the aliens' greatest weakness: their reliance on a rigid command structure and their inability to adapt quickly to unexpected tactics. "All regional commands will attack Zantari bases simultaneously," Richard continued. "The main thrust will target their refueling station in orbit. If we can destroy it, their fleet will be stranded without power." Dr. Nancy Howard, a behavioral psychologist who had spent the past 2 years studying captured Xantari, raised her hand. I've completed my latest analysis of their psychological profiles. There's something you all need to know. Nancy walked to the front of the room. Her research had become crucial to understanding their enemy. The Xantari aren't just frustrated by our resistance, she explained. They're terrified of us at a fundamental level. My interviews with prisoners reveal that our unpredictability violates everything they believe about intelligent life. Displayed a series of brain scans on the large screen. These show Xantari brain activity when shown videos of human behavior during crisis. See these patterns? That's not just confusion, it's fear. They're afraid of us, someone asked. But they have superior technology, weapons we can barely understand. It's not what we can do that frightens them, Nancy clarified. It's what we are. Where they evolved toward collective decision-making and uniform thought, we embraced individual, creativity, and cognitive diversity. What they see as chaos we call innovation. General Hayes nodded slowly. And we're going to use that fear against them tomorrow. As dawn broke across a scarred Earth, Operation Prometheus began. From hidden bases on every continent, human forces emerged to strike at Xantari positions. Some used captured alien weapons. Others used clever human inventions designed to exploit specific weaknesses in Xantari technology. In Australia, farmers turned soldiers drove vehicles equipped with Karen Mitchell's shield disruptors straight into an alien base. In Africa, resistance fighters used the continent's heat to blind Xantari sensors, attacking from directions the aliens thought impossible to traverse. Across Europe, synchronized strikes targeted communication relays, throwing the enemy into confusion. But the most important battle happened above Earth. A captured Xantari cruiser, renamed Hope, approached the massive refueling station in orbit. Captain Olivia Martinez sat in the command chair, her hands steady on controls she had spent months learning to operate. "They're hailing us," reported her communications officer, Ben Rogers. "Send the access codes we got from the last raid," Olivia ordered. "Everyone remember, act methodical, act predictable. Be what they expect until we're inside their defenses." The Xantari controllers accepted their codes. The ship glided smoothly into the docking bay of the enormous station. Once secured, Olivia gave a simple command. "Now." Throughout the ship, human soldiers who had been hiding emerged. They moved with the chaotic, adaptive tactics that made humans so unpredictable. They split into teams, each with different objectives, some to plant explosives on key systems, others to download data from the central computers, and Olivia's team to find and capture the station commander. They met resistance, but years of fighting had made humans into expert guerrilla warriors. They used tactics no alien algorithm could predict, attacking from angles the Xantari considered illogical or too risky. Olivia's team fought their way to the command center. Inside, they found the High Commander of the Xantari Extinction Fleet, a tall, regal figure whose skin had a deeper blue hue than other Xantari they had encountered. "Surrender," Olivia demanded, her weapon aimed steadily. The High Commander regarded her with large, alien eyes that showed something humans had. "Never seen in a Xantari before, respect." "You should not exist," the alien said simply. "Among all species we've cataloged across 26 galaxies, none combine your level of technological aptitude with your emotional intensity and adaptability. You are an evolutionary anomaly." "Is that why you tried to wipe us out?" Olivia asked. "Because we're different?" "Because you are a threat," the commander replied. "Not just to us, but to the established order of sentient life. Your kind does not follow the patterns all intelligent life should follow. You are chaos in a universe that requires order." As they spoke, Ben Rogers finished downloading the station's data. He whispered to Olivia, "We got it all. Star maps, locations of other civilizations, the entire history of the collective." The station shook as explosions began to tear through its structure, other teams completing their objectives. "We need to go," Ben urged. 2 minutes until critical failure. Olivia kept her weapon trained on the High Commander. "You're coming with us. Your people need to understand something. Humans aren't meant to be eliminated. We're meant to survive. As Hope detached from the dying station, explosions rippled across its surface. Throughout Earth's orbit, other Xantari ships found themselves under attack or suddenly without power as their fuel supplies were cut off. On the surface, human forces celebrated as alien craft fell from the sky or retreated to higher orbits. For the first time in 4 years, the invaders were running. In the Kansas bunker, General Hayes watched the reports come in. Victories everywhere, minimal losses. The plan had worked better than anyone dared hope. Dr. Nancy Howard joined him, her face showing cautious optimism. This isn't the end. They'll send more ships eventually. I know, Richard agreed. But we've proven something today that will echo across the galaxy. Humans are extraordinarily difficult to eliminate. As Olivia's ship returned to Earth with its valuable prisoner and even more valuable data, humanity began looking toward a future none had dared imagine during the darkest days of the war. The stars, once symbols of dreams, now represented both promise and danger. The Xantari files revealed hundreds of other alien civilizations, some who might become allies, others possibly more hostile than the Xantari themselves. But all would soon learn what the Xantari had discovered at terrible cost. Any species that tried to eliminate humanity would face a force like none they had ever encountered. Not just our technology or our weapons, but our fundamental nature, our adaptability, our diversity, our illogical, unpredictable, beautiful chaos. And now, humanity was coming for the stars.